I've heard so many people talking about an AI bubble that it really caught my attention. And what I heard that really struck me was someone saying if there's going to be a huge rise, which there already is, in AI infrastructure and spending and cost, there's going to be a huge crash. So I decided to investigate it. And here are four clear signs that we are in an AI bubble. The first sign is that there can be only one or two winners. And just like the movie Highlander, where there can be only one,
there can be only one.
You'll see that in technology, there's often one company that ends up winning. And there's a second, and maybe even if you're lucky, a third company that trails behind. But there's usually one big winner. And the market's already shaking out into that. We have a huge number of companies out there that were building the large language models, building big AI models and infrastructure and so forth. And it's really already whittling down to just a few. So we had Anthropic's Claude appears to be number one. Then OpenAI appears to be number two, right? ChatGPT. And then Google Gemini is very strong and very powerful, but it's not as publicly facing as the others are. And then there's a whole long tail after that, right? There's XAI Grok, there's Meta's Llama, and there's Microsoft's Copilot, and what's the other one? Azure. Yeah, Azure. See, I mean, it's already fading from memory for most of us. But these companies invested a huge amount of money, combined trillions of dollars, building out massive infrastructure, sucking up huge amounts of capital and resources. And in the end, like Prof G says, you're going to end up with Coke and Pepsi. You're going to end up with one and two. And we don't know who those are going to be. And that's just the American models. But fundamentally, there's going to be a fight for just one or two at the end. And we're already seeing that shakeout. So the second sign is speed of change. What does that mean? It means that if you're driving your car at 90 or 100 miles an hour, the speed of change happens very quickly versus if you're driving the car at 20 miles an hour. So for example, if you're driving the car at 20 miles an hour and you crash into a wall, you might get bumped up and bruised a little bit. But if you crash into the wall at 120 miles an hour, there's going to be a massive blowout, lots of damage, and you might not even survive it. And that's what's happening with the AI models, the big companies right now. So you're seeing a couple that are, racing very fast, and they're losing steam and they're losing capacity. And what's happening is Anthropic is number one, and they're sucking up a lot of the attention in the business world. They're getting a lot of the business from business. They're getting the B2B market, right? The second is OpenAI, and they got a huge number of folks like us using their tool, right? ChatGPT, and doing stuff with it and learning how to prompt and all that. That's really great. But the average person is not paying, or they're paying $20. That's not a big amount of money when you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. And that's a problem right now. So the extreme speed of change is very different today than it was back in the dot-com era. So back in the dot-com era, 25 years ago, 26, 27 years ago, you would grow a company. It took time to grow the company, and then it would compete, and it would compete, and maybe one or two would win and others would fail long-term. And in fact, we had a crash because so many were competing. They were overspending, they were undercapitalized, and they crashed. And in this model, they're hypercapitalized, which means that you've got, let's just call it a half a dozen big AI-driven focused companies out there that have trillions combined in committed capital and infrastructure growth. And there's only going to be Coke and Pepsi, as we said. So that speed of change means speed of crash. And speed of crash is going to be devastating. We're not going to have 3 or 4 or 5 of these models out of the top, let's just say 10, crash out at 20 miles an hour. They're crashing out at 120 miles an hour, and it's going to be just horrible for the market. Now, some of them are doing smart things, like Google realizes, hey, we're not going to be Anthropic, so they're blending the Google AI capacity and tools into everything, and it's making Google's value go up. And I was just talking with a good friend of mine about how much they're using Google Gemini now because it's so powerful, but it's embedded into everything that Google does, which makes it smarter, faster, and better. It's kind of the Chinese model, and we'll talk about that in a second. Sign number 3 is the cost of infrastructure and the operational burn rate. Well, what does that mean? It means that to play in the game, you're spending hundreds of billions of dollars to start with, and the cost of running that infrastructure and all the employees and everything else, because you still got to have some employees, all that is huge. And so what you're seeing some of these AIs are just dropping out because they're not getting market share, they're not getting income, they're having a massive burn rate, and now they're like, what do we do with the data center, right? So there's a couple of shifts going on. The first shift, for example, is like Meta. Meta is now shifting away from trying to be the winner in the game, and now they're trying to do kind of a Google thing and turn the existing infrastructure that they have in the data centers towards other services they can provide. So Meta is going to become more like Amazon Web Services, and they're hoping to break into that market and shake that up a little bit using their AI and their data centers together to go after a market niche, right? So that's pretty smart. Grok, XAI, is just suffering horribly, but they're hoping to turn their infrastructure into the different tools that, the Elon Musk umbrella of companies, they're hoping to infiltrate those companies with XAI and use them that way, and maybe still be a niche for a politically right-oriented group of people that want to use AI and hoping to capture that market. And they've actually changed their algorithm slightly to fit the desires for the output of those folks, which is a very interesting thing to talk about. But nevertheless, you can only burn infrastructure for so long and burn money and capital for so long. You've got to make money to back that up and to show you're a viable company, or you're going to crash, right? So OpenAI, ChatGPT, has just now asked the United States government to buy a golden share of about 5% in the company for about $45 billion, right? So they're going to peg themselves at just under $1 trillion valuation. But the reason why they're doing that is because they need cash. They're running out of cash. And what their play is to say, hey, US government, come get a golden share, come participate with us. That'll bring you revenue in the long term. We're gonna be the Pepsi. We might not be the Anthropic Coke, but we're gonna be the Pepsi. And you want to be involved, you want to make money, and you'll win on your returns. But also, if they're smart, and this is my suggestion, they would go and say, we're going to use everything we have with OpenAI, and we're going to use that in government to make it more efficient, more effective, more automated, better, so that the government can shrink by attrition of employees while infiltrating with more and better automation and AI tools. And right along with the cost of infrastructure and burn rate is the fact that a lot of these companies are saying, oh God, we've got to make some money. And they did the whole ChatGPT free thing. They did the low cost pitch and everything else. But now they've got to make money because, again, the burn rate's eating them alive. So that puts them in a position where they're starting to raise their prices, and businesses and individuals are squawking. A lot of companies, the IT manager, right, the director of IT is going, holy cow, my budget, it just got absorbed by increased costs with AI that everybody's using to be more efficient and effective. What am I going to do, right? So what's happening brings us to number 4. And so the fourth sign that we have an AI bubble right now are the Chinese models, because they've taken a whole different approach. And just as the American models are saying, we need to make money, the Chinese models are saying, we are making money. And let me tell you how that works. So to understand what's going on with the Chinese models, we need to back up just a little bit. In the US, what happens is we have private capital, meaning you have all these private investment and private capital organizations that fund, right? These different venture capital groups fund the new businesses and fund new ventures and fund technologies and give them money so they can start up and they can launch and they can grow and they can eventually go public and make lots of money, right? That's the idea. And what's happened is there's been this massive multi-trillion-dollar amount of money put into AI in the American system across all the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 models and companies. And what's happening now is they're like, well, we got to make money, guys. It's time. We put all this money in. We got to make money now. And so they've raised their prices, as I said, and that's put the pressure on them. And the Chinese have responded because they have a different model. In China, what's happened is you've got a couple of big AI companies there that are funded and helped by the government, the Chinese government. See, we're all afraid of government spending in the United States into private equity and private firms and private startups. And the Chinese are like, no, that's how we succeed. And so the Chinese government does two things. One, they fund it. Then they turn around and they guarantee purchases so the companies can survive. It's a very different model. And applied to AI and the big models, the Chinese government is very carefully supporting their models. But the models are taking a different approach. They've got an advantage over the American models. First, the first person to build something has the most cost, right? So you don't know what you're doing. You're trying things. It takes a lot of effort to break through. It's sort of like putting a road through a forest. If you're the first person hacking and slashing, cutting down trees to try and build a road, it's very expensive. But if someone's already got a 2-lane highway built, you can just go ahead and expand it, make it 4, 6, 8, and 12 lanes like they do in some parts of the world. And it's much easier to move traffic through and make money than if you're the first person having to dig and level the grounds and everything else. Well, the AI models in the US have been the ones to really break all the front stuff out and help grow the whole industry and help build the ideas and have massive capital. And the Chinese are a step behind, but they're getting to see where we've made mistakes. But the second thing they're doing is they're going in and they're using prompt injection attacks and other tools and techniques to break into the larger language models in the US and the big AI programs, and basically to figure out how they're working, to break down their operational systems, to understand what's working and what's not working, and to do it better, and literally sucking in all of the information and the tool itself. So they're doing what they've done for a long time, which is to hack US and Western technology and then improve on it. And they're improving on it. But the third thing they're doing that's very different is, in the US, we're going for this large language model. We're going to be the number one. We're going to be the Coke. We're going to get to AGI. We're going to get to the hyper intelligence of AI, where it can recursively, meaning it can think about itself, teach itself, learn from itself, and grow faster and faster of its own intellect, so to speak, and become wildly bright, 1,000 IQ. And then from there, we'll solve every problem. The Chinese are doing it differently. They're taking, again, they're a step behind perhaps, but they're very close, and they're learning from us, but they're applying everything to point source solutions now. In other words, in America, we're going for the big win and being the first and being the top with this super intelligence. Chinese are saying, we're not so concerned about super intelligence. We think we'll get there eventually. But what we're doing is we're amazingly deriving towards each particular business issue and business problem to implement the AI we have now to keep improving. Sort of like the Google model. Google did the same thing. Google's applied all along the way. Every time they make a new advance in AI, they apply it into each parts of their business as they go. And the Chinese are doing the same thing. So what's happening is DeepSeek and some of the other models, Quen, they're coming into the US and the West and other parts of the world, and they're getting the AI business because they have a radically reduced cost. Their run rate, their burn rate is lower. The government supported their capital, so they're not worried about having massive debt and having profits. And they have the ability right now to go in and do point source solution, and they're focusing on implementation right now in businesses around the world. So lower cost, higher speed implementation, and they're actually taking business away from the US large language models. And Prof G has said it is very likely that what's going to happen is, from one of the Chinese companies is going to emerge the Pepsi, the number two, and maybe even the Coke. We don't know yet. If the US companies aren't supported and helped to get through this process and don't self-direct like Google has into their areas of business while still providing business value externally, the Chinese models are going to eat their lunch. And we've seen it happen in solar. They've crushed the world in solar. We've seen it happen in wind. We've seen it happen in multiple technologies. We've seen it happen in cars. If you haven't seen Chinese cars, just go Google in YouTube, go search for new Chinese EVs, and it's going to blow your mind how much better they are than a Tesla, which is the best American EV at this point. So I think you just need to understand we are in a bubble. There's 4 signs. And what happens next, I don't know yet. But I'm going to research it. I'm going to find out where the trend is going, what's happening, how's that going to affect UBI? Because the whole idea of UBI, Universal Basic Income, is there's going to be this massive mountain of these giant AI companies. They're going to produce trillions in wealth, and everybody's going to have that trickle down and get checks, right, from UBI. I don't think that's going to happen, but I need to do more research before I make that video. Stay tuned. If you like what you saw here today, share it with someone. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. What do you think? Are we going to have an AI bubble? Are we in the AI bubble? And what happens if it pops? Looking forward to hearing your response.